Okay, welcome back, Year 10. Today, what we're going to be looking at is really the final act, the final event before the outbreak of the Second World War. Your lesson title is Why Did Britain and France Declare War on Germany in September 1939? Now, it hadn't come as a surprise to any of the nations or any of the politicians involved. That war was looming. The Czechoslovakian crisis of 1938 proved that. The build-up of Germany's military capacity, really beginning after the Anglo-German Naval Agreement of 1935, made it quite clear to the nations that Germany was hell-bent on conquest, or at least on reversing some of the major elements of the Treaty of Versailles. The Abyssinian crisis of 35 and 36 showed that there was now a developing anti-Allied alliance, which we will now term as the Axis. Certainly at that point, they were just known as the fascist powers. They form an anti-Soviet Union agreement known as the Anti-Comintern Pact later on in 1938 to show that they had something in common. Then they joined Japan in that. But really, by August 1939, with the agreement between the Soviet Union and Germany that neither would attack the other, made it clear that Germany was now seeking a war on its western front against France. And that is why France and Britain declared war on Germany on the 3rd of September 1939, exactly 48 hours after Germany invaded Poland, which was seen as the beginning of the Second World War. So what I want you to do is have a look at this source here. It's an extract from a textbook. Have a read through of it, and then I just want you to write down how useful you think it is in understanding the outbreak of the war. Now I want you to move on to looking at these sources here, A, B, C, D, and E. This is a really interesting source here. If you look closer, the awful warning. Just going to explain some of these for you. You'll recognize that this is Benito Mussolini from his extravagant, over-the-top military attire, which he was famous for. He's holding a newspaper saying the Abyssinian dispute, which is the nod to the reader to let you know what the source is about. This is a man generally known as John Bull. He's a fictional figure, just in the same way that Uncle Sam represents the United States in its sort of as its symbolic figure. Then John Bull represents England or Britain, and you can see here this is France represented by Liberty or some other name. These are both symbolic figures, and they are wagging their fingers at Mussolini, and this is titled "The Awful Warning." It's a little ditty: France and England together. So it rhymes. We don't want you to fight, but by jingo, if you do, we shall probably issue a joint memorandum suggesting a mild disapproval of you. Now that was very, very funny in 1936, 37. And it's more importantly, it comes from Punch magazine, which was very rarely critical of the British government. And you can see there it is being quite critical, certainly of the policy of appeasement towards Mussolini in the aftermath of the Abyssinian crisis. Source A is the words of Georges Clemenceau, who said, referring to the Treaty of Versailles, "This is not a peace treaty, it is an armistice for 20 years. Now, you might think, oh wow, this man was a prophet. He foresaw the outbreak of the Second World War, precisely 20 years after the first. But I think it was quite obvious to a lot of people that Germany, unless it was completely annihilated, which was not going to happen because of the policies of Woodrow Wilson and David Lloyd George, was going to be ready in 20 years to regain some of the lost territory and reverse some of the terms that were so harmful to it." And then here we see the classic cartoon showing the spineless leaders of democracy just bending over for Hitler, step by step. You can see disarmament. You see the Rhineland crisis, Danzig, a question mark, meaning where else would he go? And the other two sources there. Have a read through of them, study them. If you have any questions, we'll discuss them later. Then I want you to read through all of this, and I would actually like you to copy this out into your books, please, filling in the gaps with keywords. Then finally, we're going to end the lesson on a write-up. I want you to answer the question here that I've highlighted. Why did the Second World War break out in 1939? I want you to write 3 paragraphs, and this is your brief structure for them. If you can add a conclusion explaining what your most significant point was, that would be brilliant. Okay, and that's the end of your lesson. Good luck.